Donald Trump absolutely dominated on Super Tuesday, winning 547 of the allocated delegates to Nikki Haley, who is stuck at 26 delegates. Furthermore, Nikki Haley won delegates as of right now from just 4 states. 10 from the state of Minnesota, 7 from Vermont, 5 from Colorado, and 4 from North Carolina. So we're going to be analyzing and unpacking the results from tonight. Now, first off, the one state that Nikki Haley did win, the state of Vermont. This was not really much of a shocker. Some people expected Trump to win. Certainly, the New York Times did. With their needle, they projected a Trump victory chance of about 70 to 30. However, this was not a surprising outcome. If we look at the 2020 election, you can see that the areas that Nikki Haley won were very, very liberal. For example, Burlington, she did very well in Burlington in 2020. Look at some of the results here, right? Burlington, 70% went for Nikki Haley, but about 90% of the vote here actually went for Joe Biden over Donald Trump. This was not much of a surprise. Really, the votes Nikki Haley got were just Democrats crossing over to vote for Nikki Haley instead of Joe Biden. And really, even in the state of Vermont, she failed to reach a majority. She got 49.9%. Winning against Donald Trump here by just 4% overall. Furthermore, the state has a really negligible number of delegates with just 17 total delegates, and she's not at 50%, so she's not going to actually win all the delegates. Trump is probably going to still pick up a couple. Right, if we look at the largest prizes of tonight, we look at the state of California with just 47% of the vote in. However, Trump is doing really, really well. If we look at some of the estimates here, early on they had Trump winning by about 40, but right now Trump is winning by 57. In fact, he was expanding his lead. Now he's up by about 59%, and right now the New York Times has this as Trump plus 51. Pretty much Trump has been dominating in the entire state. He's doing very, very well overall, and he's really outperforming expectations in the state of California. Another state that I think Haley hoped to get some numbers from was the state of Texas. Right, Texas, there's still ways for you to win delegates without winning the state, with pretty much losing the state by a huge margin. That's why there's only 58 delegates that have been allocated, but you see a clean sweep for Donald Trump. Right, he has won every county with more than 60% of the vote, except Austin, where he's at 59%. This was a very impressive margin for Donald Trump. A state where I think Haley was counting on is the state of Massachusetts. Massachusetts, you see, with 60% of the vote actually going to Donald Trump, right? Some people thought maybe perhaps Massachusetts could go to Nikki Haley. She did not win the state. Now I'm just going to pull out the state results from the state of Massachusetts. Now going to Massachusetts here, we see there's a lot of very liberal areas. For example, Boston easily voted for Joe Biden. He got 83% of the vote there versus Trump, who got 15%. And the state is also open, so many Democrats could have voted for Nikki Haley. But look, she was not able to even win the county, the precinct of Boston. We look at some of the areas here. You see that the areas that Nikki Haley did the best here was the areas that were shaded the bluest in 2020. These are areas where Democrats generally voted for Nikki Haley instead of their own candidate, Joe Biden. Now, if we just look at some of the results here, this was still a pretty not so good result for Nikki Haley, right? We saw that in such a blue state where a lot of Democrats were crossing over to vote for her, she still was not able to do well. She still lost by pretty large margins in a lot of precincts where actually Joe Biden won in 2020. And that was not a good sign for her. Now, one of the states that could end up actually going to Nikki Haley, at least the projected margin by the New York Times is close, is the state of Utah, right? The projected margin, according to the New York Times, is about Trump plus 14. We don't have any results from there. Another state where I think Haley really expected to do relatively well in was the state of Virginia. She did campaign in the state of Virginia. Right now, she has not won a single delegate. Now, that probably will change because this state actually allocates delegates based on congressional districts. If you zoom in here, which I cannot right now, but essentially she won Fairfax, right? She won Fairfax about almost 60-40 against Donald Trump. There's a couple of these small precincts that went tremendously for Nikki Haley. She's going to pick up a couple delegates in the state of Virginia. Where else might she pick up a couple more delegates? The state of North Carolina, for instance, where it's proportional. So Nikki Haley could theoretically pick up a couple more delegates. A state like Colorado, for instance, 81% of the vote is in. We see that, again, Nikki Haley could pick up a couple more delegates here, where she's winning Denver, where some Democrats were going to vote, I believe, for Nikki Haley. And there's also, and that she's also doing, not getting, at least not getting destroyed in the state. But besides that, it looks like that she's not going to get many delegates, right? Trump has now gotten 555 delegates out of the 854 delegates allocated, right? There's really not much room for Nikki Haley to get delegates. California's winner takes all. She probably won't get any delegates in Texas. Another huge prize where she's not going to get anything. She got destroyed in a state like Maine, where she's supposed to be able to at least have a couple more votes. And really, she's not going to get any delegates from the southern states. Many of these states are winner takes all. At least if you get 50% of the vote, you're going to win all the delegates. Where could she win a couple delegates? She might be able to win a couple delegates in an area like, perhaps she might be able to get more couple delegates in North Carolina, couple delegates in Virginia, couple delegates in Minnesota, right? She might get a couple she's probably going to get the majority here in the state of Vermont. If she surpasses 50%, I think she could perhaps win all the delegates, but right now she's under 50%. Right now it does not look very likely that she's going to get more than 50. She's probably going to get about 50 to 60 delegates tonight, but that's out of 854. Assuming she gets, for example, 54 delegates and Trump gets 800, Trump would be at almost 1,000 delegates, and really she has no chance of catching up, right? She got about 30% of the popular vote, but the popular vote is insignificant. What really matters is the state's votes, and she did get 30%, by the way. She got about 25%, but really some of the popular vote statistics are insignificant. Really what does matter is the delegate path, and she has no chance. In fact, her own campaign actually admits that she has no chance of winning the nomination, and not even close. Now, on the Democratic presidential primary side, we did see that the uncommitted vote wasn't as strong as for example in a state like Michigan, and that generally Biden was able to do pretty well. The state of Oklahoma was one of the examples where he did not do too well. Dean Phillips actually won a county, but I mean Oklahoma, it's not something that's remotely significant whatsoever. And you can see that there's some random candidates who got some of the vote. It's really, again, quite insignificant. But if we look at another state where it was quite concerning actually for the Democratic Party, that was the state of Minnesota. There was a huge amount of uncommitted voters. You can see there was actually a precinct here that Joe Biden is at just 40%. I think this is a mistake. It looks like that he's above 40%, but regardless, he was not able to do too well in the Hennepin County region area. He's below 70% in counties like Hennepin, like Ramsey, where these are Democratic strongholds. Again, not looking too good for Democrats in the state of Minnesota. In Michigan, the uncommitted vote was about 12%. In the state of, I believe, about 12 to 13%. In the state of Minnesota right now, the uncommitted vote is at 19%, and there's a lot more support for Dean Phillips. Biden was above 80% of Michigan. He's right now slightly above 70% in the state of Minnesota. Again, this is not the best numbers for Joe Biden, but it's still acceptable because this was the only state this is a competitive state in November, but nonetheless, he still generally did not do too poorly. Another competitive state here is the state of North Carolina. He generally did okay here. He got 87%. Not the worst results. And then Maine, there's one competitive congressional district, semi-competitive. Joe Biden did okay there. So nothing more from there. Now for the California primaries here in the California Senate primaries, Adam Schiff and Steve Garcia won advance. Katie Porter did a lot worse than I thought. Again, there's less than half the vote is in, but still, Katie Porter did a lot worse than I thought. I thought she would be in the 20s, probably low 20s, but still, she would be in the 20% margins, and she's less than half of Adam Schiff's total, and also less than half of Steve Garcia's total. Obviously, Adam Schiff will end up winning the California race, but that's how it is, right? That's unsurprising. We look at some of the other races, there's nothing really significant, and Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.